In episode 152 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet with Lynn Rossy and discuss her book, The Mindfulness-Based Eating Solution. You can find the show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/152. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Lynn Rossy, PhD, is a licensed clinical psychologist who developed Eat for Life, a mindfulness-based intuitive eating program. She is on the board of directors of the Center for Mindful Eating. So Lynn, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thanks for having me.
You know, your book, I really appreciate the title because, I work with my clients and I tell them, I said, a lot of times we'll sit down and, we're down in the Southeast. So, of course we're big football fans and, sit down, watch a football game and you grab a bag of chips and you sit down on your couch and before you know it, it's halftime and your bag of chips are empty.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And you might have taken, 3 trips to get beer and 3 trips to get to the bathroom. But, before you know it, you've really consumed a lot of food that you didn't taste.
Right. And that doesn't just happen when you're watching a football game.
But it does happen during your game.
Yes, it does.
And so I think that's kind of one of the things that I really appreciate about, the mindfulness-based eating solution is that it's really about, when you really want to think this out, you plan, you set yourself up to succeed versus to fail. And, I've had clients and obviously I'm down here in the Southeast. So I've told them, I said, look, measure out your food, walk to your couch, sit down and only eat during the commercials and not during the Super Bowl because everybody watches commercials during the Super Bowl, but just sit down and actually enjoy that chip, because it's not that the chip is bad for you. It's that the whole bag of chips is bad for you.
Yeah, the whole bag of chips is a different story. But yeah, what you're talking about is this idea that we have to be present for eating so that we can actually know, and the body actually knows that you're eating, and you can taste what you're eating, and you can then begin to feel the body getting satisfied. Because if you don't pay attention, you actually don't know that it's happening.
Exactly. So that's why I really appreciated your book, was because it really kind of hit that core mantra of what I'm after with my clients is pay attention, because what you do in the gym is, really 1 hour out of 24 if you work out every day. And in most cases, people don't. So literally it might be 3 hours out of 176 in an entire week. So, what we're doing those other 173 hours does matter. And this was a big, I'm not going to say kick in the teeth because mindfulness is a more gentler way of saying it, but
yes, actually mindfulness is done with kindness and compassion, but I'm not into the kicking your teeth strategy.
Right.
I'm actually into, really bringing a kind, curious, non-judgmental awareness to not just eating, but everything in your life. So this book, even though it's focused on mindful eating, obviously goes a lot further than just eating to how do you feel and what are you thinking, because we know that how you're feeling and what you're thinking also leads you to the refrigerator quite a bit, depending on what those thoughts and feelings are.
Yes. And so I get into your book and then I read a statement that I frankly love. And the answer is diets don't work. So what I want you to do is I want you to take us to why you say that. And then after that, you kind of break it into steps of what actually does work.
Well, usually what I ask someone who comes to a class that I teach is, if diets worked, you probably wouldn't be here, right? Because actually in the research that I've done, people had been on diets 39% of their lives, which is a huge amount of time. And there's hundreds and thousands of diets out there. But what happens when people diet is that they're setting themselves up to fail, because when you go on a diet, let's face it, you're eating food and in a way that you cannot sustain over the long term, usually. And so when you go back to your usual way of eating, then the diet falls apart. You may lose some weight at the beginning, but then what the research shows is that once you go back to eating how you were eating before, you gain the weight back plus more. And that doing that is actually worse for your health than having never gone on a diet to begin with. Plus, when you restrict, which most diets are restrictive, when you restrict a certain kind of food, psychologically, that just sets up craving. And eventually you're going to have the food, right? If you crave something because you're forbidding it, then eventually you're going to have it, and then you're going to binge on it. You're not just going to have it, you're going to really have it. And you're going to eat a lot of it because you're never going to eat it again. And you're going to eat it in secret, and you're going to feel guilty about eating it. So it just sets up this whole cycle of, restricting and binging, which is, as we know, is terrible for the body. And then also when you're dieting, and I think this is really crucial, when you're dieting or when you're continuously looking outside of yourself for the fix, for the right thing to eat, for the right way to eat, you're not listening to your own internal signals. And as much as anything, this book is about learning how to listen to your body. Your body is extremely wise. And if you can start listening to your body about what it wants to eat, why it wants to eat, how it wants to eat, when it wants to eat, how much it wants to eat, and honor that, that's the diet you need to be on.
Well, obviously, I completely agree, because if you tell yourself, okay, I'm not going to eat something, and then when you go back on eating those things, well, your body's going to go right back to being who you were. Why did you gain the weight? Well, you gain the weight because you have this affinity for brownies, and rather than eating one brownie or maybe a quarter of a brownie, which is what you should probably be eating, you're not getting satisfied with that because you're not really enjoying it.
Right. And that's really the key. So what I do oftentimes is I have people eat a small piece of chocolate with me. And so when you eat a small piece of chocolate, I get chocolate bars and break them into many pieces. And then we take a little bit of a bite, and we're really present for it. And we can take 2 tiny bites of a large chocolate bar. I usually get the good ones, right? Not just the Hershey's bar, but the good organic, fair trade, chocolate, and really savor it. It's amazing how satisfied people are with just teeny bites. It's amazing.
Yeah. So as you kind of got into the diet's not working, you talked about kind of 3 steps. One was the diet, and the other was the scale, and the other was about how you set goals. So could you take some time to go through that?
Yeah. So as we've just been talking about, diets don't work. So I really ask people not to be on a diet, except, of course, if your doctor has prescribed something for you to do. I don't want to go against anybody's doctor. I also ask people to just stay off the scale, and as they're learning how to eat mindfully, and they begin to take this path down, listening to their bodies instead of paying attention to some kind of external, reason or number about what to eat. So getting off the scale really helps you not at least one time a day feel bad about yourself. Right. So we're really trying to feel good about ourselves, and getting on the scale usually doesn't help people do that. At least in my experience, it never did help me feel better about myself, because it's never the right number. It's like, even if you get down to the weight that you think you should be, you're going to want a different number, because everybody always wants a different number. So getting off the scale as a way of just not beating up on yourself about the number, but also so that you start relying on your body. You can tell if you've gained a little bit of weight or lost a little bit of weight by how you look, by how your clothes fit. So giving up the scale is actually a hard thing for someone to do, but when they do it, they really get this sense of freedom.
One of the things I think is really, really important with this aspect, and it's really kind of what we're after here, is we don't want to just lose weight. We want to be more healthy. I mean, most people realize that, the excess weight is unhealthy, and they want to be healthy. And the funny thing is that you can tell exactly how healthy you are when you wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and look at your eyes. And, right now I can tell you, I'm looking at a picture of you on Skype and you have glowing eyes. You have very healthy, glowing, healthy eyes. So when you look in the mirror in the morning, you can look in the mirror and say, I know I'm healthy.
Right. And you can feel it. You can feel it inside. You don't even have to look in the mirror. You can feel the energy in your body when you're eating the way that your body wants you to eat. And if you're moving the body the way it wants to move. And so, yes, the scale is not going to tell you whether you're healthy or not. Because actually, oftentimes people think they need to be, I think, way less than what is absolutely necessary because that's what our culture tells us.
Yeah, we've been told every woman should weigh 110 and every man should weigh 220 and be very muscular. And that's what we're told. And that's not reality. That's comic books.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's set us all up to feel miserable about ourselves. And so I'm really happy that there's this new movement, this body appreciation movement, an honoring of the body that I'm beginning to see in a lot of different places. And it's encouraging that we're starting to embrace the body at every size, and it's health at every size. So the goal is health, not weight.
Awesome. Okay. So in your book, now, this is a book about mindfulness because you're using mindfulness as the effective technique for managing your health. And I really appreciate that because I do believe that if you don't understand where you are and what's going on around you, then you're not present to what you're doing to yourself or for yourself. And so it's almost like you've put a blindfold on if you're not mindful about how you're managing your health. But you put together 3 components for mindfulness. Do you mind going through those components?
No, I don't mind at all. And they're all very important. So mindfulness is, I'll use the definition by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who kind of popularized mindfulness. And he said mindfulness is about paying attention in a particular way. And there's 3 components to that. The first is intentional component. So it's on purpose. You really have to set the intention to be present, right? And intention's just an important thing no matter what you're doing. But in order to be present for your life, you have to set an intention because a lot of the time the mind is wandering. It's thinking about the past, it's thinking about the future, and it's not really in the present moment. In fact, there's been some really interesting research that shows that half of the time our mind is somewhere else. So if you want to be in the present moment, you're really going to have to set an intention to be in the present moment. And then the second part of the equation is the actual attention that you're placing on whatever's happening. It may be a sound, it may be a thought, it may be a body sensation, it may be a taste. Whatever's happening in the present, you're bringing your full attention to it. And then when your mind wanders, you bring it back. Your mind wanders, you bring it back. So you keep bringing yourself back, your attention back to actually what's happening with all of your senses in each moment of your awareness. And then the last component is the attitudinal quality of mindfulness. And that's that you bring your attention to the present moment without judgment. I like to say it's with curiosity and kindness, right? So if you're not judging, you're open and you're accepting of whatever's happening in the present moment. And this piece of being in the present moment is critical for people who are trying to learn a different relationship to food and to their bodies, because we've been so self-critical. And so trying to change that, that self-talk that people do to more healthy, happy, positive, encouraging talk can be very useful.
Yeah. And so I'm in a situation where like maybe it's a family reunion or maybe a funeral or something. And now I show up and there's family members and, Aunt Martha has prepared this awesome dessert and she just really wants me to have a slice of the pie. And so I walk up and I'm like, okay, well, this is going to blow my diet. If I have this slice of pie, I'm going to eat all the pie. But if I take just a moment and I say, okay, I'll have a piece and I'll tell her, I said, if I don't eat all of it, it's only because I'm already full and I just want to taste it because it's important for me to taste your pie. So I take just one bite of the pie and I'm very mindful about how I I smell the pie, the texture of the pie as I put it in my mouth, the feelings and everything that's going on with that. Obviously emotional because this is my aunt. So I care about her and I want her to be happy. And then the tastes and the sensations as I chew and I take my time with this pie. There's just one bite of pie. And fundamentally, that one bite of pie is not going to ruin my diet. It's not going to ruin my life. And in fact, I'll enjoy the heck out of that pie if I take the time to do so. And so I think that's really, again, the mindfulness aspects that we just kind of went over. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned pie because I've had that whole scenario actually happen to me and my mother. She's always trying to give you these huge pieces of pie. And I finally learned that if I just take the pie, even if I'm not hungry, right? Because usually I say, eat when you're hungry, don't eat when you're not hungry. But sometimes you're going to eat when you're not hungry, and that's okay. You can have the piece of pie. And seriously, my mother is completely satisfied if you take the pie and only eat one bite. She just wants you to take the pie.
Yes, exactly. And that's a simple thing that we felt the pressure, the peer, it's a peer pressure is what it's called, but it's a pressure to do something because so many social events in the Western culture have been built around food.
Right. And food's a great way to celebrate, and I would be the last one to tell you not to celebrate with food because I love to celebrate with food. But you can celebrate with food, really savor really good food, and it's not a problem if you eat it mindfully. Right? Because if you're there and you're present for it and you really taste it and you really savor it, you get satisfied so much sooner. And you're paying attention to your body's signals without judgment. So you're not anxious and you're not stressed out about it. And when you relax and you can eat mindfully, it's just a wonderful experience.
Yeah. And I love that word you said, savor, because that really is kind of the core of all this, is to say food is awesome. And if you take the time with it, then it suddenly starts to matter, because then the quality of it matters. You're buying better food. You're spending more money on food. And now you're actually eating less of it.
Yeah. Well, because, when I've talked to a lot of people about this subject and been with people as they begin this path of mindfully eating, and people do begin to discover that they don't really like what they're eating. When they really pay attention to what they're eating, they notice certain things. It begins to change how you eat. So see, you don't need a diet. You need to just pay attention, and your body begins to tell you, ooh, that's got a lot of chemicals in it. Or, oh, that tastes kind of metallic, or that doesn't taste real. And when you pay attention with this curiosity, this just interested curiosity, you begin to discover this without anybody telling you. You need to do this or you need to do that.
And it's funny, yeah, even something as simple as, and I tell people this, I said, my daughter and I traveled to Europe with my nephew when they were younger, and we walked into a pizza place there, and we ordered a pizza. And we all thought, okay, a large pizza between the three of us would be plenty of pizza. Because again, in the United States, it would be this honking, huge thing. and they bring out this little 12-inch little pizza. But you would take a bite of it, and the taste explosion, just how awesome that pizza tastes. Now, we're walking around Rome and we're doing things. So we're fairly active during the period of time. So I would expect that, we would break even on pizza eating. We ate pizza every single day. we were in Rome, and lost weight because we didn't overeat. We, that first day we didn't order enough. Obviously, one of the pizzas in Rome, because the quality wasn't quite enough for the three of us. But at first we thought one large pizza between the three of us would have been enough. And it was just one of those things of saying, we started slowing down at lunchtime when we were having these pizzas, and at dinner when we were having these pizzas, because they were just so good.
Well, see, and you're kind of really hitting on almost all of the basics that I have, which I talk about in the book, which are the basics.
Which is exactly where I want to go next. Yeah.
Right. So the basics of mindful eating kind of demonstrate what you're talking about, because when you're slowing down and you're breathing and relaxing and enjoying, your body is actually processing your food much better than if you were stressed. Being stressed and eating is the worst time you can possibly eat. So in my basics, I say to breathe and belly check before you eat. First of all, just to help the body to relax. And then second of all, just to check in to see, am I really hungry?
Yeah. And one of the things that's funny, you didn't put this in the book, but I'm going to say this is when you're in a stressed mode, you have excess cortisol in your system. Okay. And that excess cortisol basically is going to make you want to catabolize muscle and store fat.
Yeah. It's actually in the book.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it is. It's sort of in there. It's not, well, a little bit, but as you look at cannibalizing the muscle and storing body fat, that point where you're now taking in the food, it's just going to go to fat. I mean, there's almost no other way for it to go. So you're literally setting yourself up for this like really downward trend of, okay, we're stressed and we're out of it. We're literally just taking in food to survive, and your body wants to just store it. So yeah, it's not a good scene. So definitely make sure that you're not in a stress situation.
Well, yeah, and sometimes it can be hard to recognize the difference between stress and hunger, because when you're stressed, you actually have kind of a you can have some kind of sensations in your belly from stress that can sometimes mimic hunger. So beginning to distinguish the two is very important. And you can do that by just breathing and relaxing. This stress reaching for food may just be, take a few deep breaths and you can recognize that and do something else like stretch or walk around the building or, do something to relieve the stress as opposed to eating. So taking a few deep breaths can be extremely helpful to help the body kick in that parasympathetic nervous system and get the body relaxed and ready to process the food that you're going to eat. So that's the first one. And then second of all is A stands for, because basics is an acronym. And so breathe and belly check to see if you're hungry and how hungry are you. And then A is assessing your food. I really like to ask people to really look at their food before they eat it and ask themselves, is this something I'd really like to put into my body? Is this something my body would really like? Because as people begin to more mindfully live and eat, they begin to have actually a greater appreciation for their body, a greater respect for their body. And so they actually stop to consider, is this something that's honoring me and my body? So that's a really important step. S stands for slow down. You talked about that, the idea of slowing down and breathing in between bites. And if you slow down, your body's going to begin to register fullness easier. It takes 20 minutes before the body will be aware that, it's full. So most of us have eaten and gone on to the next thing and forgotten what we ate in 20 minutes.
Well, the other side is take time with people, because particularly in the Western culture, we've taken food as it can be a very good cultural event. So if you're sitting down, if you have a conversation with someone, well, you're going to have to stop between bites, put your fork down and literally just have a good conversation with someone. That's going to naturally slow you down.
Right. Absolutely.
Don't necessarily eat at your desk if, that's not going to sustain you. I can tell you that's probably one of my worst offenses is that I'll literally sit there and say, I'll slam down a lunch, at my desk because, I've got 1,000 things to do. And at the same time, I do take the point in the morning to understand what my body needs that day. So that awareness, I go in and say, okay, here's what my lunch is. And I'm going to eat it, but I'm not going to eat any more. I'm so extremely fortunate at our office where I work is that they don't have snack machines.
Wow, that's great.
Anymore. So we don't have snack machines. So there's not an opportunity. I mean, there is an opportunity. I could go down to the third floor and I could, get something, but I don't, because I know what I've bought is enough. I know what I have is enough. And so that's my lunch, and it fits my plan. It fits what I want for my body because I've thought about it. And so, yeah, at that point, slow isn't necessarily a problem, but you have to understand that if slow is a problem, because so many families will sit there and bring all the food out to the table. And as a result of eating fast, they're giving themselves a second serving, and therefore they're kind of really, overeating because they haven't given their body an opportunity to understand, okay, you've had enough.
Right. And then I like to kind of distinguish between the wanting that happens in the mind as opposed to the wanting that happens in the body. So the body usually gets satiated and you're still up in your head going, oh, but it tastes good and I want some more and it's right in front of me and wouldn't some more be better?
And the waiter never sits there and says, before they serve you the meal, it's like, do you want me to bring you a box so you can cut this in half? Because I'm going to offer you a dessert, and we have this great chocolate pie, that I'm going to offer you at the end. And so I can bring you a box right now. You can cut your meal in half, take it home, have it for lunch tomorrow, and then I'm also going to sell you the pie. They don't say that. They actually just walk out after you've just eaten all this stuff and said, we have the best chocolate pie. And
I know, which comes to the next point, which is the I, which in basics, which is to investigate your hunger halfway through the meal. I mean, because a lot of us eat at our desks and a lot of us eat when we're reading and a lot of us eat when we're, doing something else or even socializing, we can kind of lose track of actually paying attention to how much we're eating. So I like to say like at least halfway through the meal to really stop, have that be kind of a moment that you go, oh, oops, I'm supposed to stop here and really check in. Because like you said, our portion sizes are huge in this country. And so if you're out to eat, for instance, you're going to probably get more than your body really needs. Or if it's just sitting around on your own kitchen table, you're likely to overeat it. So halfway through your meal, stop and check in. Am I still hungry? Right? And if you're still hungry, I mean, by all means, continue to eat. But if you're not hungry at that point, you can pack it away for later. You can get a box or you can, put it away for leftovers for the next day. So it's a good way to kind of let the food spread out over time and you don't have to eat it all at once. So that's the I. Then the C is to chew thoroughly. And that kind of goes along with the slowing down. So chewing your food thoroughly is a way of slowing down. And it's a way of helping the body to actually get the nutrient value out of the food. It helps the body to digest the food, particularly for people that are having digestive problems. This can be a really, really helpful thing for people to do. So I think chewing does all kinds of amazing things that we don't even stop to consider.
It does, because we release enzymes that help us actually, use the food that we're eating. And so much of what we're consuming, the calories of it, don't actually become value to our body because we don't give it the opportunity to actually be what it's supposed to be. And so we're not actually using the protein completely. We're not using the fat completely. And those are the two components of your body that you actually have to have. I mean, you don't actually have to have carbohydrates. Our body is so efficient at processing carbohydrates. You can swallow it whole. You could swallow a whole piece of orange and literally your body would use every bit of that orange. It would spit out the little bit of fiber that's there, but it would use the rest of it. But with protein and with fats, that doesn't happen. Unfortunately, that just doesn't happen. So you really have to manage the chewing, because that's where the first part. And I tell people this, it's, one of the things is that when you sit down with some food, the digestive process actually starts with seeing and smelling the food.
Absolutely.
And then the chewing is the next huge piece in actually making that food matter for your body. And if you're not doing those three things, if you're not taking the time to look at your food, the presentation of it, smelling your food, and then chewing your food, then you're really missing the value that food gives you, because food should be, fuel, food should be building materials, and food should just be fun. It should just be an experience, a part of your life. So I really appreciate this part of basics.
I love it. You talk about chewing. It's like something you do all the time, but people don't really think about it. It's like breathing. I go around and tell people to breathe a lot, and it's something you do all the time, but unless you really think about it, you're not usually doing it as efficiently as you could be. So definitely chewing is one of my favorites as well, but not as much as the last one, which is savor. S stands for savor. And I love to savor good food, and I love to find good food to eat. And I really, really encourage people to begin to enjoy this wonderful, times that we have throughout the day to savor food. There's all kinds of wonderful food that we can enjoy and savor. And if you aren't savoring your food, then I don't think you should eat it.
Exactly. If it comes in a box, you're probably not savoring it.
I know.
Just saying.
Yeah. No, I tell people, go savor whatever it is that you want to eat. I don't tell people that they can have anything that they want, but you have to go and you have to really be present for it, and you have to really pay attention to it, and you have to really try and savor it. And if you find out you can't, maybe you don't want to be eating it. So I ruin fast food for everybody, but I don't tell them they can't have it. They just discover it by themselves.
Completely agree. It's kind of one of the funny things is, I was having a conversation with someone earlier about food, and they're like, well, isn't it pretty expensive to eat that way? And I said, it's actually less expensive. And I don't know how to explain it any other way than to say, I eat less food. So whereas I used to walk into a steakhouse and eat a 24-ounce steak, now I don't need a 24-ounce steak, a 3-ounce steak. I walk into a restaurant, order a 6-ounce steak that's really, really good. And I tell them before I order it, just bring me a box. And I'll literally take half of the steak and just cut it in half, and I put half of it in a box, and that's my lunch tomorrow. So that meal now has become 2 meals. And in some cases, depending on the restaurant, now 3 meals, to just whatever they're doing. And so from a cost perspective, it's not as bad as it sounds, because I don't need 12 ounces or 16 ounces or 24 ounces of meat to be my nutrition for the night. It literally is 3 ounces of steak and 3 or 4 ounces of steak, some vegetables, and I'm good.
Right. And when you're paying attention, slowing down, and really eating quality food, your body will be satisfied with less.
Exactly. And that's what I really appreciate, again, about your book, is that it slows us down. It makes us think about it and actually start enjoying our life, enjoying our food a little bit more, because it's a great opportunity to have that enjoyment with friends or family, or even when we're by ourselves. It's just an opportunity to be in the moment and really enjoy what we're doing. So again, thank you. If someone wanted to get in touch with you or get the book, where would you like for me to send them?
Well, you can go to my website. It's pretty easy. It's lynnrossy.com. So that's LYNNROSSY.com. Or the book, which is the Mindfulness-Based Eating Solution, is available on any of your online retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Awesome. This is going to be episode 152. So if you go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/152, you can find all those links on the show notes. So again, Lynn, thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, Alan. It's been wonderful.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, would you please share it? Just send them to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/152. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet with David Klemansky and Joshua Curtis and discuss their book, Don't Let Your Anxiety Run Your Life, using the science of emotion regulation and mindfulness to overcome fear and worry. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.